relations with the agencies, relations with the Congress in terms of getting a job done, just throwing these things at Donald Trump and having him sign them without. I mean, look, we talked about this a little bit earlier. To me, Barack Obama sometimes was cautious to the extreme in terms of meetings and studies and conversations before he would make a decision. You know, with Trump, it's the other extreme.
Yeah,
zero thought.
Well, first of all, he clearly doesn't care.
Yes.
Number two, he's got these two guys in the White House, Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, who have a worldview that is not supported by very many other people, except for I don't know, basically your like white nationalists, and so they're the ones writing the policy. It's pretty clear that Reince Priebus has almost no influence in this White House, the chief of staff. It is pretty clear that the cabinet has no influence in this White House. And that these two guys are going to write our public policy, whether domestic or international policy. Right. And they are on the very fringe of political thought in the United States. Not on the fringe of acceptable political thought, but on the fringe of all political thought in the United States.
All right. And Steve Bannon, moving right along. What hasn't gotten as much attention as it might have otherwise is that Donald Trump, we have him signing this executive order, Jamie, the second executive order at the Pentagon, where he reshuffled the National Security Council. Here's Donald Trump explaining it, just housekeeping.
This is the organization of the National Security Council and the Homeland Security Council. You know pretty much what it represents a lot.
Right. So my understanding is that what he says now when the National Security Council meets, that the Director of National Intelligence will no longer be there at every meeting. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs will no longer be there at every meeting. This is, again, the National Security Council. They'll only be called in when issues that they have anything to do with are being discussed. But the person who will take their place at every meeting is Steve Bannon. Breitbart News, now the White House. You know, Susan Rice, former National Security Advisor, put out a tweet yesterday saying this was, quote, stone cold crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. And the White House is pointing us out right now, and I think it's fair for them to point out. This is the way George W. Bush did it. It is not that the Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff are going to be blocked from the actual National Security Council meetings, which are the meetings that they have when the president is in attendance. Mm-hmm. What they are going to do is not be there for all of the so-called Principals Committee meetings. And in some ways, that may not be the worst thing from the perspective of you probably don't want your Director of National Intelligence and your Joint Chiefs Chairman in meetings at the White House all day long every day. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I think that's, at some level, probably a way of making it easier for them to not have to come to talk about budgets for the State Department and things like that. I actually don't think that part is nearly as crazy as having Steve Bannon.
Well, I was going to say, but you can't escape the fact that the person who is going to be there every day is Steve Bannon, who has zero qualifications to be there.
Yeah, I mean, if things go bad, people are going to be talking about the Bannonality of evil.
Oh.